there's nothing like the pride of Hampton County. I mean, there's just nothing like Hampton County out there. Isn't that right, AJ?
That's right. That's right. How y'all doing? It's good to be back with y'all. Think I remember how to log on to here, but we're here and ready to get rolling.
Happy New Year, my man.
Yeah, man.
Absolutely, same to y'all.
Yeah, well, it wasn't as happy for Gamecock football with the loss that day in Orlando. But, Alex, we hit on some of this yesterday, right, JC? Bowl games just they matter. They do matter, because if they didn't matter, then you wouldn't have seen Illinois and South Carolina fighting like they were to win the game. I mean, it mattered to both of those teams. There's no question about that. But I'm not so sure that it carries in a tremendous weight with it if you lose the game like the world is ending. It sucks, there's no doubt. And for the Gamecocks, clearly getting to 10 wins was a big deal. That was a big deal to Illinois. They don't do it very often either. But as far as like ruining the trajectory of the program and things like that, that stuff is such a wash now, right, Alex? I mean, you cover this every day with the portal and all the things that are out there that can help you immediately. You're no longer waiting 2 and 3 years for folks to develop. But anyways, my point is, now that we're a week later, 1 week today, from last week's loss, after you've kind of sat on it and written about it and things like that, how do you kind of describe the 2024 season and what it means to the future of Shane Beamer and his football program?
Yeah, I mean, it was a huge success. The 2024 season was. I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head. Like, there's a lot of motivation in that bowl game for both teams, and I thought that's what made that bowl game great. Was there's all this talk about how much bowl games maybe don't matter anymore, but that wasn't the case in the Citrus Bowl. I mean, both of these teams were motivated to go and get double-digit wins. I thought it made that game competitive, and I thought it made it great. But it did. With South Carolina losing, it doesn't take away what they were able to accomplish throughout the regular season. I mean, a 6-game winning streak going into the bowl game. I mean, they took a huge step forward and Shane Beamer in this season. And I think it's one. You're coming off the 5-7 season, and then you go and you hit the portal, and you basically hit on seems like just about every bit of their transfers. And I think that just shows the trajectory of this program's going up. And losing a bowl game, it probably, in the moment, sucked for the team, but it's not going to be something that's going to keep them down. And, it could, in return, provide them a little bit of motivation when you think about it. You go in with a 6-game winning or 7-game winning streak. If you win the game, you're going to have a lot of hype going into this off season. And, maybe this is something that Shane Beamer and the staff can use. Is like, hey, you're this close and it's going to take this much work to now get you over the hump.
There's a lot right now to sell about the Carolina football program, and when we get to April, by the way, I do think that's going to be a shining moment for the Gamecocks when the NFL draft arrives. There's definitely going to be one name I would say in the first round. If it was me, there'd be 2 names in the first round, both in Nicky Manwari and TJ Sanders. Hell, I'll be honest with you, probably 3. I mean, Kyle Kennard, I think, is just continuing to be slept on, and as time goes on, his name will probably rise up the draft boards. But they're probably, JC probably know better than all of us here. I'm trying to remember. It's probably been 10 or 11 years, I would think, since Carolina's had 6, 7, 8 guys go in the draft, right? So 9-4, you return this star quarterback. You got all these draft guys. You're hitting in the portal. You've had another nice recruiting class. I mean, there's going to be plenty of stuff, barring major injury or some crazy transfer in the next portal opening in the spring, which none of us anticipate at this point because they've all signed deals. But barring anything crazy like that, I think it's going to be a tremendous opportunity for Gamecock football to promote itself across the nation as we lead into the fall.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you're starting to see that now with, I mean, they're promoting the program as hard as they can just because of all the momentum that it does have. And, I think even with that loss to Illinois, you're still seeing people, give South Carolina hype going into the off season.
Yeah.
And I think when these
that never happens.
Yeah. I mean, when you see these way too early rankings start to come out, I think you're going to see South Carolina inside the top 20. You know, maybe they find their way into the top 15. But having a guy like LaNorris Sellers come back and what he was able to do in a national spotlight, you know, think about that Clemson game really towards the end of the regular season. I mean, this team's going to have a lot of attention in the offseason. I think that's kind of the next step for the South Carolina program is, you know, how do they handle that hype that they're more than likely going to get this offseason? You know, I think you saw a little bit of that, you know, in the 5-7 season. You know, they had a little bit of hype going into that season just because of what they're able to do at the end of the season before that with the Tennessee and Clemson wins, and you know, ended up going 5-7. So I think that's kind of one of the next steps for this program is just be able to handle all of that attention and hype. And I think, you know, I think they got a really good chance to do that with the players they have returning.
Yeah. Look, on that note too, if there's anything that has been proven to us since Coach Beamer has come back to Columbia, South Carolina, his teams get better as the season goes along. And really, I think for the first time in a long time, you know, you mentioned the hype, right? And I don't want to get too out in front of our skis here. It's a long ways away, but because the season just ended, that's what generally people do. They look ahead. For the first time in a long time, the hype will match the opportunity. And what I mean by that is the schedule. And I'm not being disrespectful because I do think that Virginia Tech's going to have a good football team next season. Certainly, going to Missouri, we know the challenge there and the history with these two teams. Who knows what Kentucky's going to look like? Vanderbilt has their quarterback for the 13th year of his college career. You know, so you know those are all in the first five, including South Carolina State. But you don't have a trip to Tuscaloosa mixed in there, or a trip to College Station mixed in there, or anything like that. You know, so I guess what I'm getting at here is, Alex, that there's, as I mentioned, the hype matching the opportunity, and you mentioned just a little bit ago, you know, what you can sell out there. Hey guys, we were 1 win shy of going to the college football playoff last year. 1 win. We need to find one more win next year if we can win 9 again. And Shane Beamer's the perfect guy to take this team down that road. I think I know I'm doing a lot of talking and you're the guest, so I need to shut up and let you talk. But, you know, we saw a lot of responses yesterday about Beamer and how hot he got at Brett Bielema. JC made, I think, the point of the day. First and foremost, on a personal level, I loved it. I thought it was the right moment for him to do what he did. As JC said, that's who he is. You know, how long did people spend beating up Dabo Swinney, including yours truly? He won. What are you going to do about that? You might not like the guy, but they sure as hell like him up there because they've won football games and national championships, right? You know, that's him. And I think that authenticity is what has gotten them to this moment. So when you get to the beginning of the year next year, after all this hype, if you get off to a good start and continue to get better like they have every year in his tenure, who knows what could happen with Carolina football.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the trajectory of the program right now, and it's obviously going up. And then you see, you know, the opportunity early part of that season next year. You know, they can kind of. It seems like, you know, that schedule's kind of not easy because it's never easy, but there's a lot of opportunities early on to get some momentum going in that 2025 schedule. And one thing with that Virginia Tech game too is like you're going to be in a national spotlight in that game coming off the season that you had being. It's a Sunday game. It's that game, you know, in Atlanta. You know, there's going to be a lot of eyes on that game. You have the Virginia Tech Shane Beamer storyline and all that. So, I mean, South Carolina's going to be in the spotlight this offseason, and I think they got a chance to only continue that heading into the early part of the season.
Is there a quarterback in the league, guys? Alex, we'll start with you. Is there a quarterback in the league this year that progressed more or even anywhere near how far LaNorris Sellers came from week 1 to – I know the bowl game wasn't his best game. I didn't think that it was personally, but that's because he had kind of set some expectations up there over the last month or so of the year. Can you think of anybody in this league that you go, yeah, you know, his development was probably right in line with 16s?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think he's at the top. from that standpoint, just from the progression that he made. I mean, it was pretty incredible. I mean, I think that's one thing that was really cool to see with LaNorris progression this year is he'd be a guy who would make a mistake once and he wouldn't make it again. He was learning from mistakes, and they've talked about, how quick of a learner he is. And I thought that was pretty impressive with what he did. We talk about, that early part of the season, it was a turnover issue, holding on to the ball in the pocket, and that continued to improve throughout the season. I mean, you saw a couple spots here and there, but it definitely improved throughout the season. So, I mean, he's going to be one of those quarterbacks that's talked about, here in the offseason. Who knows if he gets that early Heisman contention or consideration, but I mean, his progression was really impressive this year. And I mean, I don't know there's another quarterback in the SEC that showed the progress that he did and was playing as well as he was down the stretch.
Most of the guys we talked about preseason got worse. I mean, Jackson Dart was kind of the last man standing. Quinn Ewers has not gotten any better than he was when he came in. Probably not worse. Jackson Dart probably got a little better, but he kind of was what he was. DJ Lagway, I think was very impressive for Florida, especially being a true freshman. But he played at a high level every time. I mean, he played the same level every time he got in. There wasn't some light that went off for him. He came back from injury because they were in a bad situation and played like he's played. I mean, he played well. So I don't think we saw, like, from game 1 to game 12 the improvement. And just with LaNorris's legs, I mean, just about how much faster he was operating against Clemson than he was operating against Old Dominion will tell you that. That's not to mention all the performances in between. So no, I mean, who else got better? Nico certainly didn't from Tennessee.
No,
I didn't think. Van Buren from Mississippi State.
That's the one I was going to throw out. He played pretty well middle of the season and maybe didn't have the kind of season he wanted down the stretch, but that was the one that I was thinking of.
Yeah, he's at LSU now, being the backup. LSU's pretty good at getting backup quarterbacks, I guess. That start in other league games.
Hey, where did Swan go? I saw that he
App State to play for Dowell Loggins.
That's right. Good for him. That's a good
reunited, and it feels so good.
Well, Dowell wanted him in Columbia. That's a good marriage there.
And by the way, I think Wake Forest is a good fit for Robbie Ashford. Yeah. I mean, if they're going to run the quarterback, especially. But there's really not anybody else that's done all that. I mean, like, I didn't think Garrett Nussmeier was LSU's problem. When they were hit that lull, I thought he was good all year. I thought he was JC. I thought he was at times trying to do too much.
Yeah, and that's a bad thing. I think
that's him. I mean, but you look, Jackson Arnold got better, but where did he start? I mean, what was the starting point there? Peyton Thorne definitely. Jalen Milroe fell completely apart at times. As good as he was playing, I mean, he was people talk about LaNorris being inconsistent. Jalen Milroe, after how many years in college as a starter, was tremendously. So I can't find one, man, that got that much better. Now, there's an off-season hype train, and depending on, Texas's season's not over. So there's not the portal exits for them. There's a lot of talk about what will happen with this Quinn Ewers, Arch Manning thing. So there's going to be some off-season hype for some other guys. Lagway, Arch if Quinn leaves. Jackson Arnold's now at Auburn. They're going to talk him up. But I don't know of if you talk about progression, it's not always linear, but as far as got better every single game and is only going to get much better the more he plays, there's not another guy that falls into that. Outside of LaNorris Sellers, with the exception of maybe DJ Lagway, who is a great scheme fit for what Billy Napier does on offense, and really is I have to give credit. He's a very special player. Like LaNorris, but is he as good? I wouldn't take Lagway over Sellers. Lagway can't run like that.
No, and credit to the Florida Gators too. They actually did what I thought they would do before the season. I got a lot of pushback on that. I thought they'd be better than people thought they would, and they finished here with 4 straight wins: LSU, Ole Miss, Florida State, and Tulane. And that extension to Billy Napier looks pretty good now, doesn't it? That's not directed at any of you. All right, so on that point, because I agree with JC 100%, Alex, on that point,
I'll say one thing about Florida. Now they did turn it, but they looked pretty they turned it that Kentucky game. because they weren't favored in that one. And they beat the crap out of it. And then they were like, oh, we can start playing it. And not losing to what ended up being a bad UCF team helped them too. But they were so bad at the beginning of the year because they were that you and Shane Matthews, who ended up being right, Shane Matthews predicted them to go 8-4. They went 8-5. Mm-hmm. It looked like a bad take, but that's why we play 12 games, JB.
Well,
that's why we play 12 games. So, JB, the baseball player here, it's always what? How many innings? There's not. How many outs you get? As Ray Tanner always say, 27.
Bill, how many?
Can't call it at 12.
How many fifth inning avalanches have we dealt with, JC? I'm turning this crap off. I ain't watching it anymore. I'm like, you don't want to turn it back on. They're up 12-2.
It's worse than basketball, man. Basketball, I will turn it off in a heartbeat. And they always play better when I turn it off, except Saturday. They did not. So.
Yeah, well, they didn't. All right, so how about this? So, point blank, bold question of the day to the pride of Hampton County here. You ready, Alex? You ready for this? Don't be a homer. Answer honestly. We get to July. SEC Media Days approaches. Is LaNorris Sellers the face of the SEC?
I'm going to say no, but I think he's got a chance to be. But I feel like just how we've seen maybe like a national media perspective work, maybe somebody else who knows with this transfer portal cycle who comes in, do they, maybe looking at Texas, is that a Quinn Ewers? Is that going to be an Arch Manning? So, I think he's got a definite case to be, but who knows just from a perspective standpoint if that actually happens.
One of the things that I think is really special right now for this football program is, Shane Beamer loses his offensive coordinator to the head coaching position. He promoted Mike Shula. Let that just pause for a second. Think about this. I get it. Everybody out there always wants to hate on the OC. I'm not one of those guys, so I don't buy into it. He promoted a guy who called plays for years in the NFL, developed Cam Newton, worked with Josh Allen. This was the guy on the sidelines. Also, Alex, you watched it. You sat in the box for every game. When LaNorris Sellers ran to the sideline, who do you run to every time?
Shula.
Mike Shula. And so if there are things that maybe aren't perfect, maybe it's the playbook, maybe it's the play call, whatever it is they need to figure out from time to time. Having that relationship where how well they understand each other after 1 year of working together, I can't remember the last time that existed at South Carolina, where you saw a kid develop that much in his first year. And someone's going to throw out Connor Shaw. Connor Shaw did not develop like that in his first year. Let me remind everybody about 2010. Okay. This kid has developed quicker than any quarterback we've ever seen at South Carolina in 1 year of football. And the guy who helped get him there alongside Dowell is now his offensive coordinator, and he was his right-hand man throughout the season. I can't find anything that is wrong with any of that, even remotely close to negative. You can bitch and moan about play calls and playbooks and whatever you want to bitch and moan about. So be it. When that camaraderie between quarterback and OC is there like it is, and the understanding that you kind of get on the same wavelength and you see things through each other's eyes like that, it's hard to stop that.
Yeah, and Shane Beamer is big on continuity, and I think that was this is going to be a seamless transition for that to happen because of what you mentioned, those two work together. Mike Shula maybe did more of the behind the scenes stuff this past year, as in his role, but he played a huge part in helping develop LaNorris Sellers. You mentioned how Shula was on the field with him every game, kind of helping relay stuff from Dowell Logism and what Shula's seen on the field. So I think it's going to be a seamless transition, and kind of what we saw from Shula in the bowl game. I thought he called a fine game. When you look at how the offense performed, from 20-20, they moved the ball pretty well throughout the game. It's just once they got into the red zone, they couldn't find a way to score or even get field goals at that point. But I thought, there's times where in that game where LaNorris Sellers was maybe a little bit rusty, just coming off a long break. There were a few guys open down the field that, if he hits, Josh Simon in the end zone, or maybe hits Dale Von Campbell in the run, they end up scoring on that drive. But point being, there were a couple of guys open that, LaNorris just missed, was a little bit rusty. But, I thought he, for his first game calling plays, there wasn't really too much to gripe about. You're always going to have a play or two there that you think should be different. But, I thought for first game called, I thought Mike Shula called a good game.
I did too. Side note, JC mentioned that yesterday, the Campbell catch, because it was a little bit behind him. He kind of stumbled and fell over. There was multiple throws or other throws that he didn't hit down the field. Had he hit, they were gone. I mean, they're gone. 50, 60-yard touchdowns, catch it and go. Carolina runs away with the football game. Did any of you saw it because you were where your seat, you were up in the press box, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So from your seat, you could probably calculate it. Did any of you calculate how long or how far he threw that football in the actual air from where he was standing on the field?
Yeah, I know. He bombed that thing.
70 yards.
Yeah.
It was a bomb.
I mean, it was a hammer of a throw. I haven't seen a throw like that in a long time in a game. I mean, when he reared back to let it rip, I thought there's no freaking way he's throwing the football to Dale Von Campbell. And my God, he hit him right in the helmet. I mean, it was 70 yards in the air, guys.
Yeah, he's got great downfield accuracy.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that's one of the things that makes him special is he is already accurate with the football.
Yeah, I mean, that needs to improve, though.
Well, it does. I mean, he's got to improve the accuracy, but it's not like he's climbing a mountain to get there, right?
Well, it's not like he's inaccurate, is what you're saying.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, he's got legs, and that's not all he's got. He's got an arm too. That's the special thing about LaNorris Sellers. This
kid is going to be something. All right, Alex will always sprinkle football in with you. It didn't end the way that it wanted to, but overall, a great year for Carolina football, 9-4. Real quick before I let you run, though. On the hardwood, things are looking a little slippery right now. Carolina waxed in Starkville this weekend, and they got Alabama. It's 7:00 tomorrow night at the Colonial Life Arena, and the students need to be drunk and loud, at least loud. Well, if you're of age, that's fine, I guess. Your synopsis here of this team, 10-4, entering SEC play. All quad 1, quad 2 opportunities left, by the way.
Yeah, when you look at how the team performed kind of down the stretch in non-conference play, kind of taking the Clemson game out of it, you saw some signs of that made you worry about them getting into SEC play. One of the big things that always kind of worried me for the team was they're getting off to really slow starts against some of these non-conference teams like a Presbyterian or a Radford, a team that maybe you shouldn't be getting off to slow starts to. But in those games, they just kind of outmatched them in the second half, out-talented them. And, that wasn't going to happen in the SEC. It's not going to happen in the SEC, and that showed. They got off to a slow start against Mississippi State, and things just weren't clicking really offensively in against Mississippi State. And going up against a team like Mississippi State with Chris Jans, like if you get behind early and Mississippi State gets a big lead, it's going to be really tough to get back into it just because of the way they play defense. And he's a defensive-minded coach, and he has that group playing really good defensively. So was not a good start to the SEC play. Moving forward, it's not going to get any easier, especially this week with 2 top 5 teams coming into Colonial Life Arena. They just got to have some more guys step up. And I think it's just some things just aren't clicking right now for that team. But, if they want any shot at the NCAA tournament, they got to get it figured out pretty quickly here.
Tremendous opportunity. There's no question about that with the Tide and War Eagle up next. But you certainly would love to see somebody a little bit weaker tomorrow just to get a win under your belt. And we'll see if Carolina can get it done. They were throttled on the road in week 2 last year in Tuscaloosa, and they were able to bounce back. Lamont Paris has been good about getting his teams to forget and move on. But they gotta get some leadership out there on the floor. There's no doubt. Alex, we'll let you run on that note, man. Any parting shots before we get out of here? Any brain busters? You going to break any news today? What's going on? How about a running back? Is Carolina going to sign a running back today? Come on, give us the beans.
Hey, they got the one on campus, Rahsul Faison from Utah State's a guy who, they were going after Justice Haynes, and he ended up going to Michigan. But if you can find a way to land Faison, that's a guy who's proven at Utah State, and the guy could fit right into that offense and be a real nice complementary piece to what they have in the running back room, and then with LaNorris Sellers. So it's going to be interesting to keep up with. You see how they kind of finish out, not only in a running back, but some of these other transfer portal spots that they're looking to fill needs, especially defensively.
I am 99.99% sure that Rahsul Faison is in no way, shape, or form related to Rashad Faison, who played here at South Carolina in the early 2000s. I know that. However, here's your homework assignment. Find out if he's as tough as Rashad Faison, because if he is, give me 100 of those guys.
Yeah.
Rashad Faison would knock you into next week, and then the week after that once you got there. So figure out if this kid's as tough as that kid, and if so, Carolina's going to win the national championship next year. That's my prediction, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, they get that. I mean, you take that every day.
Well, yeah, I tell you might be right about that. If they get Faison, they might just run through this.
The missing piece.
I'd love to see, if he's as tough as Rashad, I'd love to see them run into each other and see what happens. That'd be something. Always glad to have you. We'll look forward to seeing you again next week, Mr. Pride of Hampton County.
Always appreciate it. Good to be back with you guys.
Thanks, Alex. There you go, great Alex.